Hello and welcome to the KE Report. I'm your host, Shad Markwitz, and we're speaking today with AbraSilver Resource Corp, traded on the TSX.V under the ticker ABRA and on the OTCQX under the ticker ABBRF. And we're joined with John Miniotis, President and CEO of AbraSilver Corp, and Dave O'Connor, Chief Geologist for AbraSilver Resource Corp. And gentlemen, it's great to have you on the call, as always, to discuss this year's Phase 4 exploration program. It's going to be a 20,000 meter program. It's fully funded. There's a lot of exciting targets to get to. I won't steal your thunder. Let's dig right into what this year's plan is going to look like. John, I'll throw it over to you first, just for the high level goals of this year's exploration campaign.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Shad. As always, nice to be back, and we're extremely excited to be kicking off the drilling campaign again. I think clearly Dave and our exploration team at site have done truly a phenomenal job for us over the past few years, growing the resource base at our Diablillos project. And so for this campaign, we honestly now have more exploration targets identified than we've ever had in the past. So we're really looking forward to some of the drill results here. And so, yeah, in terms of a high level summary, look, as mentioned in our press release, we just started drilling. We'll have 3 drill rigs going for a 20,000 meter campaign, which will last all of this year and likely probably into January of next year. So lots of drilling ahead of us. About 75% of the drilling budget, roughly, is going to be allocated to finding more high-grade oxide mineralization around the existing Oculto and JAC deposits. So there's various targets there that we've discussed in the past, whether it's Fantasma, Alpaca, etc. So these are looking for higher grade oxide mineralization, similar to what we found at JAC in 2023. And of course, if those are successful, could significantly further bolster the economics that we announced in our pre-feasibility study. So that's very exciting for sure. But importantly, as part of this campaign now, for the first time, we're also stepping out into brand new targets that we've never really drilled in the past. And so there's several blue sky targets here that we're extremely excited to be drilling. And obviously, Dave can walk us through those in more detail if you like.
Well, let's dig into it. I guess let's first start with some of the known entities. Last year, you really did a bang-up job of finishing the drilling out of the JAC zone, but you also found JAC North. You put a few holes in Fantasma and Alpaca. For people that have been following along or new listeners listening into this project for the first time, as you say, this oxide potential at surface is really spiking the punch bowl at the front end of the mine plan because it's closer to surface, it's high grade. I guess let's start there, Dave. As far as JAC North and Alpaca and Fantasma, what are some of the things you'd like people to know about the drilling you'll be doing there this year?
I might just start off by saying that when we found JAC with our discovery hole about 1.5 years ago, we were drilling at Oculto itself within the open pit to expand the high-grade resource within the open pit. We have a series of broad-spaced drill holes within the pit, 100 meters apart, on the basis of which we know the mineralization is there, but it wasn't close enough space to be included in a resource estimate. We had very legitimate targets over there with 2 drills operating, then we moved them onto JAC. We really need to be responsible and go back and finish off that drilling, expanding the resource, the high-grade resource at Oculto. But in addition to that, as you mentioned, we have high-grade potential resources, shallow depths on the peripheries of JAC and Oculto. So we have these other targets, Alpaca, Fantasma, and Laderas, which are close to the margins of the pit, which will be our top priority targets. But in addition to that, of course, now that we're well funded, we're going to start exploring some more interesting, more exciting, and more conceptual targets a bit further away.
Well, let's talk about those next. What are some of these new targets? And we get a lot of questions, Dave, so maybe you could address this, that in addition to the oxides, there's a lot of gold and copper showings on your property a little bit further at depth in the sulphides. And people have been sending in questions, are those going to be some of the targets you go after in those other further afield discovery drilling that you're doing?
We have great intercepts in the sulfides underneath the oxides, based on the high-grade copper with associated gold under Oculto and silver, a high-grade gold under Oculto and high-grade gold silver under JAC. Those are in feeder zones which go down to a porphyry at depth, the porphyry being too deep to be considered economic. But the feeders themselves are pretty high grade and constitute a resource which we haven't been concentrating on because it's sulphide. But now with the extra cash that we have and the ability to go further afield, we're going to be drilling some holes. We're going to be carrying out exploration and siting some holes in the porphyry complex area, which is 3.5 to 5 kilometers northeast of the Oculto pit. We'll start off by doing geophysics to identify the best targets to drill, and then we plan to drill a series of holes to test for a porphyry system there. The porphyry system, the alteration associated with the intrusive porphyry actually outcrops, and it contains gold with copper, but the copper's been leached out. We know it's been leached out because there's secondary concentrations of copper in form of chalcophyte and on patinas on sulfides. So it's a copper gold porphyry system with also associated molybdenum, which we haven't drilled before because it's any resource that is developed there will be sulfides and would not be part of the cyanide leach process. So now that we're opening our wallets and opening our eyes a bit, we'll be drilling over there as well. And another target that's interesting, which is more conceptual, is something called the jasperoid target. It's an outcropping jasperoid linear outcrop which strikes north-south, and recent magnetics in that area identified a low magnetic anomaly, a zone of low magnetic intensity striking north-south, parallel to and adjacent to the jasperoid outcrop. So this is all starting to look quite interesting. Some historical sampling over there identified anomalous gold in the jasperoid. So we've just finished doing systematic channel sampling over that, and we'll be siting a couple of drill holes into their reconnaissance holes to start with to see what it looks like. Our proposed exploration is actually going to be in two phases. One is reconnaissance, on the basis of which we will decide whether or not to do more intense, more grid drilling to generate resources. And then the second phase, of course, will be bringing in a bigger rig to drill any resources which might be there.
Well, and John, I want to just throw this question at you. As far as some of these targets, the more known entities closer to Oculto and JAC, things like the JAC North, Alpaca, Fantasma, do you see those, if you hit a couple more holes in there, do you see those being part of the resource drilling? Would you then work those into a resource estimate eventually if you have a successful campaign on this phase 4 at some of those targets?
Yeah, of course. So that's definitely the plan, is to incorporate those into the mine plan. So get those drilled out into the resource and then ultimately into a reserve as well. And yeah, really the goal is, look, we already have a very robust project at current spot prices using the pre-feasibility study. The net present value here is over $1 billion Canadian already. And so, very robust economics. But when you look at the mine plan, it's really for the first 5 years that we have exceptionally high grades of both gold and silver. And that's because we'll be mining out that JAC zone in the first 5 years. That gets mined out. And then also at Oculto, we'll be mining out the silver enrichment zone during that same time period. So we're really now looking beyond year 5, saying, is there additional mineralization here that's similar grades, higher than the current grades that we have in the existing mine plan, that we could bring in, and that really just elevates the grade profile beyond year 5, say from year 5 to about year 10. So yeah, no, look, we're feeling very, very confident here based on the drilling we've done to date. We think there's clearly signs that there's significant silver mineralization that we have not yet tested. And now is a great time for us to be drilling and hopefully lots of exciting news ahead of us here.
Well, and John, just one more quick follow-up. I know that just recently you guys had inked the deal where you brought in 2 different strategic partners, one of those being Kinross Gold, and one of the plans was to start looking at regional exploration in Argentina. Are some of these targets that you're looking at just on your own property that may be some of those sulphide targets and the copper gold targets along with the silver, do those play into that vision, or are you actually looking at other projects, other areas that you may start attacking later in the year or next year?
Yeah, so that was a separate agreement. So with Kinross, yeah, we have a regional sort of partnership, if you will. So for any new acquisitions, we would offer Kinross basically a right of first offer So they would have the option, basically, of acquiring 50% of any new projects that we're looking at the same terms. So then we would form a separate JV company and look to jointly make any new acquisitions. But that right of first offer does not apply at all to anything in Diablillos. So for Diablillos, that's obviously our marquee project. We want 100% of that. And so, yeah, for all of this drilling that we're doing that falls within our existing concession, yeah, that belongs obviously 100% to us. But yeah, no, we're certainly looking and working collaboratively with Kinross, their group. Obviously, they have lots of talent there, working closely with them and looking to hopefully, see if it makes sense. Any new potential acquisition targets in Argentina, we would love to partner with Kinross and continue to grow our portfolio as well. And so, yeah, stay tuned there. I mean, obviously nothing to report there for the time being, but yeah, I think that's going on behind the scenes. And yeah, we're extremely, extremely bullish on Argentina. We think we have the right team in place, obviously first mover advantage as we're growing Diablillos. At the same time, we're looking at various other opportunities as well. So yeah, no, just an exciting time for our company for sure.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. I just didn't know if they had any interest in some of the copper and the sulphide targets on your own property, coming in as a stakeholder in AbraSilver. Did they express any interest in going for bigger targets just on your own land package, coming in just as a stakeholder in Abra?
Yeah, so we have a separate sort of technical committee with Kinross and Central Puerto as well. And so, yeah, we're in constant dialogue with them. Yeah, they absolutely encouraged us to drill beyond the known mineralization. And so, yeah, I think they'd be very excited for us if we were to find additional, high-grade gold and copper in some of the porphyry targets that we're drilling. So for sure, yeah, we have their full support. But yeah, of course, AbraSilver would own 100% of everything at Diablillos that we find.
All right, David, I want to throw one back over to you. You had talked in the past about a target near the Oculto pit, and it's the Laderas target. I think you'd put some holes in there in the past. Are you going to do any drilling on Laderas in this program in Phase 4?
Laderas is right on the boundary, the northern boundary of the conceptual Whittle pit. So, of course, we're going to drill some holes that, as you know, that there are holes into that. There's a small gold-dominant resource there, which didn't quite cut the mustard to get into the estimate for the PFS. But we're going to be drilling more holes to see the extent of that based on low magnetic anomaly, a linear magnetic anomaly going further towards the northeast. Yes, we have some plans for that. That's one of the peripheral targets around the Oculto and JAC proposed Whittle pit.
And then could you put a little more color on some of these new targets that you mentioned in an answer earlier? You talked about the Cerro Bayo, the Cerro Viejo, there's the Cerro Blanco, those kind of targets. Could you give us just a little more color about what you're going after there?
Okay, let's get Cerro Bayo out of the way first. That's immediately, it's about 500 meters to the east of the Oculto zone. It's an area where historical drilling got a shallow intercept of pretty high-grade gold, and it hasn't been followed up. And we don't know how it fits into the overall plan, overall system, of the overall mineralized system, but we're planning some reconnaissance work in that area. That's Cerro Bayo. It's another one of these targets peripheral to the Oculto zone. Cerro Viejo and Cerro Blanco, those are two parts of the porphyry complex. At Cerro Blanco, there's a large outcropping. We call it the Big Black Breccia. It's a breccia zone which is cemented by oxidized, which used to be sulphides. It's very anomalous in molybdenum, up to over 800 ppm molybdenum parts, and 2 or 3 grams per ton gold. There has been some historical drilling there without any success, and it was very shallow, and we don't think that it was very well conceived. But that is a breccia system, part of the overall porphyry complex over there. The main targets, though, in the porphyry complex are the historical shallow drilling, which got 0.25 grams per ton gold at shallow depths, from which the copper has been leached. We know the copper has been leached from that because there are patinas of chalcocite around primary sulfides. So the copper has been leached from the surface and is reprecipitating lower down. So what we're doing now with our proposed geophysical test work, we're just sending it out to tender right now. We'll be doing some electromagnetic work either Triton or CSAMT, to try and define hotter spots within that porphyry system, higher grade areas. We'll also be doing some clay spectrography to see where the higher temperature clay mineralization is, which should reflect the underlying porphyry. And on the basis of that, we'll be drilling some holes to look for a porphyry system, which we know is there because the alteration halo around it outcrops.
All right, so a lot of work to do, not just with the drill bit, but also with some of these different survey methods and modern exploration science on the ground and further afield than we've seen in prior drill programs. So a lot on the go with AbraSilver, just continuing to drill out the resources that'll go into resource updates and economic studies, but also a lot of exciting new targets to go after for this Phase 4 drill program. I guess, John, just wrap us up, bring us home with the key takeaways you want people looking for as this drill program unrolls throughout the course of this year.
Yeah, so certainly, as you mentioned, lots of news flow ahead of us. We think we have a number of very, very exciting targets. And so, as early as I'd say probably late June, early July, we could expect sort of the first assay results to start coming back from the lab. And yeah, as per prior exploration campaigns, we expect every 3 to 4 weeks on average. We'll continue to provide the market with updates as we get back results. So stay tuned. Lots of exciting exploration results ahead of us here. At the same time, we're also continuing to advance this project on the permitting side, looking to submit the environmental impact assessment shortly. So looking to get the permitting started and move closer and closer towards that important construction decision stage. So yeah, I think lots of exciting news flow ahead, and happy to come back on as we have further developments and give you and your listeners an update.
Sounds great. I appreciate you gentlemen both being on the KE Report today. It's always great to get an update from AbraSilver. And if folks listening in want to follow along with all the news flow, definitely click on the link below this interview. It takes you over to the company website directly to their news section. And John, Dave, looking forward to our next conversation.
Thanks very much, Chad.